So, thanks again for joining for tonight. This is our interior design for neurodiverse home series. This one is around creating calm and organization. So, we're going to get started. So, for me, this topic is very personal. I've seen how inclusive design soothes and regulates my own neurodiverse family, where we have ADHD, PANS, PANDAS, and I'm just going to call my husband's undiagnosed sensory irritants. I've worked with both neurotypical clients and those with various sensory challenges, and everybody's so appreciated. I mean, as I've said, as you know, I'm definitely not the first one, as other people have said before me. When we design for those who are sensitive, we design for everybody because everybody enjoys it at the end of the day. So I'm really excited to embrace this niche and share user-friendly solutions with as many people as I can. So I am Rachel Jackson. I'm a neuro-inclusive interior designer in Austin, Texas, and I specialize in design specifically for ADHD homes. And I really enjoy, you know, continuing education, and recently have gotten a couple of certificates from the Institute of Challenging Disorganization, which I'm going to link several places here in the presentation because they have so many good resources. So if you are a homeowner, just someone who wants to know and understand a little bit about how to organize well, it's for you. If you are in the industry in any way, a student, designer, organizer, they have wonderful resources that teach you how to kind of really get into root causes of chronic disorganization primarily, and the things that come along with that. So we will get right in. So I do have these pictures up. So you'll see, as I said, neuro-inclusive design is very personal. My son, from a very young age, had some very strong opinions about his spaces. The first one is his bedroom in middle school. And this is the first time. So I really enjoy kind of I do love darker rooms, but I've always enjoyed the contrast that artwork has off of lighter colored walls. And so my whole house is typically in lighter colors. Anyway, he said he wanted a black room. And I was like, well, that's not happening. We can go super dark. And he's like, okay, but I want it on the ceiling too. And I was just like, he's like, I want the whole room, and I'm like color drenching it. And it was, I mean, he was, I think, fifth grade. Anyway, and I said, okay, I'm not doing that, but we can compromise. And so I compromised. And I did this bedroom where you have kind of I wrapped it in a very dark bluish charcoal. And he absolutely loved it. He loved it. And then when you draw the curtains, it makes it dark. But his next room, I was like, okay, we will go all in. And this is his room after he moved off for college. And I took over and kind of turned it into a guest room slash his room, but it still got some of his stuff from his old karate bow staff. Anyway, so this just kind of shows you in our family, design shows up, especially for Jackson, in very cozy, dark, cave-like spaces. Anyway, so it's so interesting how things kind of evolve. All right, so real quick, what is neuro-inclusive design? Why is it important? So neurodiversity is an umbrella term. It describes lots of conditions that cause some to process information differently than their neurotypical peers. So you've got the common ones are autism, ADHD, learning disabilities, sensory processing issues, Down syndrome, mental health conditions, and then they cause symptoms like heightened anxiety, difficulty with focusing or staying still, sensitivities, especially to light, sound, touch, and smells. And so you'll see those symptoms. And the really cool thing is this workshop is full of some well-studied and impactful tools for this sensory challenged community. And it's kind of like a beginner's toolkit. So not everything is going to work for everybody, but it allows you some really great resources. So keep that in mind as we move along. All right, so how to create calm with color. Research shows that color choice has a profound effect on sensory processing. So colors for calm Um, Soft neutrals. So think anything that's a shade of nature: blue, sky, green, grass, brown, earth, and then whites and blacks. So neutrals here are, I'm kind of, it's kind of a soft neutral. It's colors of nature. Those tend to be very calming and soothing. Um, So in picture one, two, and three, we're focused primarily on color. And then we move down to these pictures four, five, and six. And this is something interesting. So low contrast designs are preferred. Contrast designs are five and six. Sometimes high contrast can just be jarring and just increase the busyness that people feel or sense when they're in a room. So, like kitchen number four, it's gorgeous, but just the drastic differences of color can just come across as busy. And so sensitive people frequently prefer, if you're going to go either whether it's dark or light, um, to have not as much contrast. And an interesting thing, so when you guys get this presentation, you'll see a lot of my sources down here that you can go and nerd out to if you want. Okay, this looks like a lot of words. We're not going to walk through it all, but this is my process when I'm working with a client or when I'm consulting and someone has said, help me figure out my preferred style and color palette. These are the 5 steps for each of those that I work through with them. So 5 steps to your project style. You can find that over here. Um, Color palette though. So this is interesting. If you look at any kind of balanced space, you will typically see kind of the rule of thirds, the golden ratio show up. And how it shows up in color is, we're going to look at this picture right here. So the first section, 60%, typically 60% is going to be your foundation color. So that palette is what the dominant colors of the room are. For example, in this photo over here, you've got creamy and warm neutrals. And they're used with roughly equal frequency on pieces, both large and small, whether it's the sofa, some of the vases, the wall, the ceiling, that kind of thing. Then 30% of your palette is going to support that foundational color. It's different enough to be its own focus though. So in this picture, um, you see a lot of like mild and dark browns. You've got it in the art, the accent pillows, the planters, some ceiling beams, door trim, that kind of stuff. Then your final 10% is going to be, and I don't know if you guys can see, Evie's napping in my lap. Sometimes she just pops up. That final 10% is going to be your accent colors. And if you go for a more monochrome look, it could even just be an accent texture. But here it is like mossy green of the plants, muddled that red and pink, like the throw and the art, some of the pink in the artwork, that kind of thing. And again, you have kind of those like muted colors, and we'll get to that in a second. Kind of the difference between highly saturated colors versus muted colors. So yeah, when you work through all the steps and you're able to define your preferred color palette, that can really be helpful if you're redoing a room, refreshing a room, or even just, again, to kind of nerd out and learn more about yourself. Oh, and real quick on that. So you do have a link down here, and that is a link to the style and color palette guide, which is free on my website. So if you want to download the whole thing, it's got a handful more pages. So not just this. Okay. Over here, we are going to look at like, what does calming color look like? So one thing, bring nature in. When thinking about decor, and whether it's like decor all the way to paint tones, using colors found in nature just do have that calming effect. It's why they're used so frequently in spa settings. And then whether using a dark or a light color, if you keep the saturation muted, so right here are some definitely not muted colors. Right here are the same colors. I just added gray to them. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about like highly saturated colors versus muted colors. And again, here's our guest bedroom. Also, stick to simple patterns. So studies have shown that people who are sensitive, especially there's GNS architecture out of London. They specialize in residential and educational spaces for autistic children. And they have come up with a color palette that tends to be just like overwhelmingly friendly to that group. And one thing they also noted is like a lot of patterns, a lot of busyness can be irritating. So keeping your patterns simple as well can be nice. And then just use contrast in ways that you enjoy. So some people do enjoy when colors stand out a bit. Others prefer, just that more monochrome palette. So it really is up to you. And then here are just some examples of how you can have that contrast, whether you do a light space, real light, whether you go in those mid-tones or you want something kind of dark and cozy. You can have that low contrast in any of those color palettes. Okay, moving on to our next section, we're going to talk about creating calm with sound management. So noise sensitivity is common in the neurodiverse community. So managing that sound is essential. What does that look like? Well, soft surfaces. So incorporating rugs, curtains, upholstered furniture, all of those things absorb sound. Hard surfaces tend to echo and amplify noise. One quick word on that. I know a lot of us have kids, dogs, that kind of thing. And while straddling the line between kind of being eco-conscious and conscious of some of the chemicals in synthetic materials, trying to kind of ride that line, and then also wanting to make sure your house, has some of that sound dampening from rugs. A couple of things. So I love vintage rugs, vintage 100% or at least like 85% wool rugs. Those are some of my favorites because wool naturally repels stains. In fact, I have a reel on it where Evie went and dropped a frozen cherry on my white wool rug. It's a reel on Instagram, and I got the cherry up in less than a minute just with water and a little bit of dish soap. So I love wool rugs. They're not always, if I had a puppy or very small kids, it may not be enough because they are kind of pricey. And one thing that you could do is look into Ruggable or some of the washable. So the differences are with a wool rug, you have some of that, especially if it's a vintage wool rug, you have some of that sustainability from it being, used before. And you have just kind of the natural aspect of it. But with a Ruggable or something, you have just kind of the ease that you may need for a season to be able to throw it in the washer. So those are just two options when you're thinking about rugs. And I also have a shopping guide free on my website. You can download it. What I love about that is I included how you search for vintage and consignment pieces because that is kind of one of my specialties. I love treasure hunting and I love the sustainability about it. So you can look in there and it will give you exact keywords to use when looking on Etsy, Cherish, Everything But the House, some of those consignment websites and some that I don't even know about yet. Okay, so that's a word on rugs. Also acoustic panels. So wall-mounted panels in neutral colors can absorb sound and help create quieter spaces. Some of my favorites are felt-right tiles. They also have wood finishes available, so I highly recommend looking there. They've got some really cool looks. Their Instagram is great for getting a visual. And then white noise machines. Consider integrating white noise machines, everywhere. Our air purifier kind of doubles as one downstairs. Sound management also comes in the shape for me of when I'm working and I need to really dial in. I need something that is going to kind of drown out distractions. One of those things that I like to do is turn on either like rain sounds, with thunder. Sometimes I'll do like bird sounds. And what's interesting about the like a jungle or like kind of more of a forest scene is um, when we were, we lived more with nature, people would sense, and animals still today sense when there are birds out there, there are no predators, big predators anyway. There are no big predators around. And so there's this underlying like nervous system settling thing that happens when we hear birds, because genetically through centuries, we've been programmed to think, oh, there's birds around. There's not a cougar. There's not a lion. Anyway, our bodies react to it. Very interesting. So you can throw in some nature sounds too if you really just need to like settle down and drown the distractions. Okay, sensory zones. What's really cool is if you can designate a room, corner, or just place for a sensory break. Um, for an adult, this could look like a sofa or chair in your bedroom or home office, just kind of adding cozy layers, maybe a sound machine, that kind of thing, to make it some place where you enjoy going and sitting. For kids or teens, it could be similar, but if they share a room, that can make it tricky. I grew up in a large family, so it was chaotic a lot of the time. And looking back, I realized what I was doing. I wasn't doing it on purpose at the time, but what I was doing is once everybody got to bed, and I think especially I was the oldest, and so with a lot of my younger siblings, it definitely was like making that happen. Like, please go to bed. I would go and take my recent Sherlock Holmes DVD, not DVD, like a Discman, CD, I guess. And I would sit with my Discman with my little earbuds in and pop some popcorn, make my favorite drink. And I would sit on the couch and just dive into my book for just, hours. So we all kind of can create a sensory space, even if there's not like an actual space. It might look more like a sensory time. But either way, sensory zones can be very, very helpful for all of us. And then textures. So people do have different tactile sensitivities, obviously. So something that feels soft to me, it does not feel soft to my husband. But materials in general, like microfiber, cotton, or soft wool, can provide that soothing tactile experience. And yeah, just kind of avoid anything scratchy, or like there's sometimes when things just feel like sticky. Anyway, everybody's different. So keep that in mind. And then weighted blankets for people who, like, I think I mentioned this maybe earlier, but neurodiverse people, they're either a blend of either sensory seeking, sensory avoidant, or a blend. And I'm a blend. I mean, depending on my mood, I either, kind of want that like weight, that pressure from a sensory seeking perspective, or not. But having a variety of like textures, weighted things, things like that around are very helpful. So weighted and sensory friendly items. And then organizational tips, just kind of making sure that they're washable. Like, for instance, when I'm looking for new throws, I try to avoid things with tassels. Um, so just things like that. But those can be very helpful. Okay. So this lighting is a couple of slides, but I will say it is probably the easiest and the cheapest way to really get some sensory friendly space going on in your house. Just remember a couple of things. One, make sure when you're sitting by a lamp, whether it's in a chair, a sofa, your bed, make sure the bottom of the shade is going below your eye level, because one of the worst things is when you're sitting by a lamp and the bulb is just like driving into the side of my eyeball. It's terrible. This little guide came out of my decorative lighting guide that is available on my website. It's like 120 pages of, it's intense. If you are building a home, it's incredible though, because it talks about light fixture placement, size, that kind of thing. But these are just a couple of pictures out of it. All right, this is a fun little experiment. Um, one, the thing that I would say about lighting in general is make it warm and no bare bulbs. Okay. So let's do a group exercise. So let's go over this picture. This is a wonderful client. I was doing her home and I arrived and okay, so put your hand over the right side of this picture. Okay. So just stare at that left side of the picture while the right side is covered. And now move your hand over to the left side and look at the right side. Do you notice anything? And notice if you do tend to kind of be sensitive to lighting, you probably cringed a little bit when you saw that blue light, hospital light, right after you had been looking at that really warm, yummy light. So the difference is here, it's a typical daylight bulb is that bluish one. So it's a 500 Kelvin bulb, and I'm going to show you how to read light bulb labels. It's super easy, but that is a daylight bulb. And I mean, if you wanted to throw that, I just don't even know where I would just never use a 5,000 Kelvin bulb. But say you wanted to go to like 4,000 in the bathroom for excellent makeup lighting, go for it. Go for it. Vanity lighting is probably the only place that I would use. I hate them. The one on the left side of the sideboard, though, is a 2,700 Kelvin light. And so that's what's used when it's just kind of like, it's like, not totally orange, but it's like warm and like sunrise, sunset kind of light. Okay, so real quick, I'm going to show you how to read a Kelvin temp. This is just lots of stuff you can read. But the important thing is finding your own personal preference. Usually it lands right around here, 2,700 to 3,000 kelvins. And when you go onto a light bulb package, it looks like a nutrition label, but it is in fact your kelvins and lumens, I think probably. Yeah. Anyway, so right here on this little slide, you see the kelvins. So this package this label came from a 2,700 Kelvin label package. So kind of find your ideal range, and that is where you find that. And so you can just change out your light bulbs. And if you have any of that blue, so I went into her home, we'll go back real quick. All of the house was that blue, except there's this little archway you see on the left side of the page. And through that room was a beautiful little sitting area, kind of toward the front door. And that was the other light bulb. And so that's another thing. You don't want to mix your light bulbs in a direct visual range, like where you can see one versus the other. So try to be consistent. Once you find your favorite Kelvin, try to be consistent throughout the house, except in places, of course, like a bathroom or something like that, where you need maybe more of a daylight look. I would say in the bathroom, do that for like the vanity area, but make sure if you're going to try to take a relaxing bath or something that you're able to turn those off so that you can just have that kind of warmth. Okay, and then a common misconception to light bulb brightness is it's based on watts, but it's not. It's based on lumens. So the reason that my friend had blue, well, it was, but had the daylight bulbs in the dining room was she said we couldn't see when they had their other light bulbs in. And I was like, oh, well, you can find warm light bulbs that have a high lumen to them. So that's what we did. We ended up going to the store and getting high lumen light bulbs that were warm. And it's very, very helpful to know. But again, like the other label, you'll find the lumens, and they're right here where it says brightness. They're right there on the light bulb box. And then in my decorative lighting and concept to completion living room guide, I give a grid of kind of how many lumens you need in task areas. Like, how bright do you need your kitchen to be? How bright do you need your bathroom to be? How bright does the front porch need to be? That kind of thing. So everything can be properly lit. Okay, next, creating calm with space planning. So creating clear, organized space can help reduce anxiety and create that calming sense of order. Just kind of, like Brene Brown says, clear is kind. Clutter-free zones, keep open spaces, and I'm going to tell you how to get clutter-free zones in a minute, so don't despair. In fact, I'm using some of my own pictures from my house, things that I have friends who've not even seen what y'all are about to see. So just know that's coming. So clutter-free zones, keeping open spaces clear to reduce that visual overstimulation. Use built-in or storage furniture to keep most items out of sight. Maintain wide open walkways just to prevent that overcrowding. And then avoid placing too much furniture in a room, which can feel visually and spatially overwhelming. I say that and I'm a maximalist. So I have layers and furniture tucked in all sorts of corners. So this is, again, you have to find your personal boundaries with stuff. And I still just kind of have to, I navigate mine because I buy and see beautiful pieces of furniture for a living. And so it's really hard when I find something, especially for a silly price on consignment or Facebook Marketplace. It tends to come and find a home. Anyway, so that said, space planning is helpful. Another thing about space planning is it helps for your the measurements of adjacent pieces to be in a good proportion to each other. For instance, if you go into your living room and things just kind of feel off and you realize your side table by your sofa is like 12 to 18 inches lower than your sofa arm, well, your lamp's going to be at an awkward spot. You can't really set down a glass on the table easily. There's all these like weird incongruent things. So space planning helps you understand the relationship between, especially in a living room, between your side tables, your sofa, your coffee table, and your sofa seat height, all of that. Definitely keeping those things in mind just kind of makes things feel better. And then how to create calm with scent or lack of. So heightened sense of smell is so common. And just kind of scent management or fragrance-free environments can make a big impact. So one thing to do is using unscented or naturally scented products to just kind of prevent that sensory overload. And consider, I don't even know why I can tolerate some candles, but I walk into, Bath and Body Works and come out with a migraine. There are candles that, I know about like soy-based and this and that, but I feel like how clean are they really? All I know is some candles I can stand, but pretty much anything from Home Goods will give me a migraine. So that means that I buy really expensive candles and I don't buy them all that frequently because they're expensive. So a lot of the times I will do an essential oil diffuser. That's kind of my go-to. And then around the holidays, I may have like some simmering pots of like herbs and spices. But that is kind of, oh, and I love, you see this little bit of Palo Santo wood. I love that. But most incense bothers me. So who knows? You just have to figure out kind of what works for your people. Installing air purifiers are very helpful. And keep in mind too, off-gassing from new furniture and building materials. So those VOCs that are found in adhesives and flooring, foam in our furniture. I have a whole series on kind of clean sourcing that I walk through with clients. And so I hope to do a workshop on that as well. One thing I really love again about used furniture is it's had a chance to off-gas. So even if it's got this beautiful burl wood furniture, that's off-gassed decades ago, or at least, years ago. So that's kind of one thing to consider when getting furniture. I will say though, I don't typically, some like side chairs, armchairs I will, but sofas, like an upholstered sofa, I've had kids. I know what they do on sofas. So not typically that. But when I'm talking about furniture, is like a lot of the hard stuff, like wood furniture, and that kind of thing, or just some like nice side chairs that you can feel fairly comfortable about. Anyway, going off on that. Okay, guys, this is what y'all are going to see this. Do you see what you're seeing? Oh my gosh. Okay. Research shows clutter and busyness, visual busyness can be overstimulating. So let's create some calm with organization. And you may think, where do I even start? Yeah, me too. Okay, so here's what my closet gets to look like on bad days. I do have hangers on the back of my door that end up like there's some closet space over here that will end up being empty because everything's kind of here or, in a floor drobe situation. So what do? Piles are friends. So let's watch this little video again. Piles are friends. Their names are pitch. Oh, hold on. Where'd I go? Okay. Pitch, pass, price, and place. All right. So you make piles. You get into your spot where it is just a mess, right? And you're like, ugh, where do I even start? Start making your piles. One, it just isn't even worth it. It needs to go to the trash. This, I'm going to donate it. It's going to move it along. Pass. Yes, pass, donate. Price. It's a good piece. You're going to try to sell it. And then place. You're keeping that one. So those are your 4 piles. If needed, you can have a will I miss it pile. And I have a storage bag that I got. It's kind of like clear. It's like 3 feet by 2 feet. And I have items in there that I don't know if I want to get rid of it. But if I put it in there and I forget about it, and a year later I go through it and I was like, oh, I didn't need it, then it's going to go into, donate or sell or something. And typically around here, I'll just donate it or I use it until like nobody else can and it's in the trash. So these are very big things to remember, takeaways from tonight. And when you do, you can go from a closet that looks like this, insanity. Okay, things. And I'm not saying it looks like this all the time. Like I can get it to this and then, slowly it just kind of crumbles. But with that strategy, that's the only way I can do it. And in the middle of it, you're going to feel like it is just a big mess and you're like, what have I done? Just keep going through, just keep going through. Put on some nice music. I don't know, that kind of thing. Okay, so you've processed your piles. Then what? Storage furniture. So make sure that your home is equipped with storage furniture. So you see this photo. This is my dining room. This is my pantry door. This is my garage door. So I work down here quite a bit. I'm actually here right now, as you can probably see. What I have on the left side of this console is a lot of my work supplies. And what I have on the right side is a lot of like go stuff, whether it's dog leash, dog walk bag, different purses, different things that like I need, like sunscreen or lip balm, or just like random things that as I'm leaving, as I'm going out the garage door, I want to grab. And it's a place to where I can just drop my purse, drop my stuff when I come in the garage door. So proximity is really crucial, like figuring out what your paths are. That is something so massively important with figuring out your organization. And then this is in our living room, another big piece of storage furniture. And it has like extra kitchenware. Our kitchen is tiny, kitchenware, barware, that kind of thing. And then we have our bar stashed below. So storage pieces of furniture, do not underestimate them. Also, a close friend or a professional can offer really long-lasting solutions. And when I say friend, it's because I like my husband, for instance, and it's common. I commonly see couples who one is better at organization than the other. And so typically, if I can get my piles done, Jimmy can come in and help with the organization process of it. But he even still has limitations. And that's when I call in a pro and I'm like, hey, can you come either consult with me, tell me what I need to go get at the Container Store. Can you actually just do it? That kind of thing. And us neurodiverse people tend to have emotional or nostalgic connections with things that do make us predisposed to something called chronic disorganization. So even as a maximalist, like I do thrive mentally in tidy, minimal spaces, but I wouldn't want to live in one. Like I like some of my things. Um, and we'll get into that in a minute, kind of how I navigate that. But here's some general organizational tips. Like once you get your piles processed, here's how to store things. And I really do think decluttering, investing in storage solutions, and then working with a pro or a friend are three of the best things that someone who struggles with clutter can do for themselves. So, and then this fact sheet right here. So a little bit about where I've learned some of what I have, but I have so much more to go is from the Institute for Challenging Disorganization. And they have a lot of fact sheets and things like that. And so you can kind of go in here and see, well, here's some common characteristics of individuals affected by chronic disorganization. Might I have some of these? And then, I proceed to go down here and check all the boxes. You can kind of see for yourself. And then they do have this find a professional directory if you do want to work with a pro. They have a great directory right here that you can go to and search for that. All right. So how do I deal with my clutter? Because all of this is very like personalized to how you live. One of my favorite tricks I learned while working on my chronic disorganization certificate is to make a dedicated and limited space to hold memory pieces. So those of us who find comfort in items that hold sentimental value quickly become overwhelmed by them if we don't learn some boundaries around storing, keeping, that kind of thing. So one of my things is mementos from trips are usable or decorative items. So coffee mugs, books about local culture, food and architecture, Christmas ornaments, that kind of thing. In fact, one of my favorite little pieces of artwork in my living room is from a shop in Wales. I had just toured a little castle and went to their shop, and there was a hand painted note card. And I think it was, I don't know, like £5 max. And I came home and I framed it, and it's this beautiful watercolor of the castle. And it's got a great memory attached to it. It was super cheap. And it was a way that I can display that memory without having a bunch of clutter. Now, do I have like little receipts and rail pass tabs and things like that from that trip? I did allow myself to keep a few, but that's next. One way I keep clutter at bay is I have a set of nostalgia bins. So one is always ongoing and the lid is off. It's upstairs in my closet and it sits on top of the others. I've collected things that are like go in these bins since I think probably there's like childhood things in there, a few, but mostly like from my teenage years onward. And so it's just some clear storage bins from Container Store, and they're all the same so that it's just, it looks decent even though it's in a closet. But anyway, the one on top has a lid off. So if I do have that concert ticket stub or that menu or something that I do when I remember that moment by, it can just get tossed in there and kind of be out of sight. Now, I will say, kind of going through that part is something that's important to our family because our family really enjoys kind of sitting every year or so and just kind of going through old stuff. I mean, not all the bins every year, but it's an enjoyable activity. And so that's why it's important to me. But, y'all could have a different way of storing what's important to you, but that kind of works for me. Okay. And then also if someone gives me a gift and I don't use it in over a year, with gratitude in my heart, I just kind of quietly send the item on to the donation center because, and that was a really hard for me to do for a long time, but I really worked to kind of disentangle the sentiment behind that. And one strategy too is taking a picture of the item. You can have a little shared album in your phone and be like, name it, whatever, and take pictures of mementos and then just kind of, keep them there. So there's different strategies that you can use. Okay, so just as a summary, practical tips, we've got them in here. So color, muted tones, may prefer limited contrast and patterns. Lighting, dimmers are ideal, dimmers on everything. I heard this once. You would never have a radio with only one volume. Why would you do that with lights? It's so true. So dimmers, as much as possible. Warm 2700 to 3000 Kelvin temperature. No bare, flickering, or fluorescent bulbs. And then keywords here are diffuse, dimmable, warm, glowing, and hidden. Sounds, music on in the background to drown out distractions. Nature sounds can comfort and help you zone in at school and work. All the soft things, soft is subjective, so whatever feels right to the user as far as textures go. Space planning, wide, clear paths. Limited busyness and visual clutter. Furniture that doubles as storage is ideal. Avoid chemicals or artificial fragrances for scents, especially the stronger ones. And natural options can be a soothing alternative to no fragrances because no fragrances is boring. Organization, pass, pitch, price, and place, and maybe hold. Storage furniture, and then a friend or professional organizer with what you have left. Then just general comfort. I wanted to say heating pads are one of my favorite ways to add comfort to a seating area. I have one plugged in my little, and it's right here in my lap. I love heating pads. And a way to bring nature indoors is by adding real or fake plants. I like an easy to care for combo. And that's what makes me happy. Okay, so here are some resources for you guys. The Star Institute for Sensory Processing, Autism Speaks, autism.org, CHAD, and the Institute for Challenging Disorganization. There are so many resources out there. It can probably get overwhelming, but it's kind of neat to do a little hyper-focus moment and deep dive into some of these websites because they hold just a ton of treasures. And then books, things that I have found helpful. Thinking in Pictures, My Life with Autism, Driven to Distraction. That one's on ADHD. And this one, especially Making Homes That Work. And this is kind of creative housing for built environments that support the autistic community. That's a really interesting one. So anyway, all those links are there for you guys. And thank you so much for learning with me today. I'm really excited to answer any questions you have or observations. I know that was a lot of information. So if your brain is just like, click, we're leaving, and you'll just look at my presentation later, that is fine too. But yeah, here's some ways that you can keep up with me. And that's all I've got. So if you guys have, let's see, we've got 15 minutes left. Does anybody have any questions? I'll take it back to maybe stop share. And again, no worries if nobody has questions. Okay, guys. Well, I enjoyed spending the evening with you. Thank you so much for showing up tonight, and I hope you learned something fun and maybe helpful. So we will be hearing from us probably by early next week. I'll get the presentation out to you guys by then, and y'all can kind of go through it and let me know if you have any questions. Follow up in any of those ways too, even, apart from workshops. Okay. Bye, guys. Thanks a bunch.